As Noah and Riley grew closer throughout 1995 and 1996, the rest of their friends were finding their own paths in love as well. Susie, Bree, Anna, Jack, Andrew, and Mark had each found partners of their own, or at least boyfriends and girlfriends, but none of those relationships had yet grown into anything beyond dating. Susie was in the longest-lasting relationship, having been with the same gentleman for quite some time, while everyone else's romances tended to come and go. Still, as long as they were happy, everyone else was happy for them. More than anything, their friends were relieved that Noah had finally found someone who truly suited him. Tate had been a kind and caring person, but in the end he simply hadn't been the right partner for Noah. It seemed that Riley was. A month after Terrence's funeral, Chloe invited Tate to Charles's house in the hope of repairing the strained relationship that had long existed between her husband and her brother. Throughout the visit, Derek's name was never mentioned, as though everyone had silently agreed to leave the past untouched. Charles made a sincere effort to mend the fence between them, offering conversation and extending an olive branch, but Tate seemed distant and unreceptive. Whether he couldn't forgive the past or simply no longer cared to revisit it, he wanted no part in reconciliation. Charles's photography studio doubled as a personal hall of fame, its walls lined with striking portraits of the countless celebrities he had photographed over the years, whether for professional assignments, private sessions, or elaborate public relations campaigns. Before dinner, while Chloe and Charles's girlfriend Loretta were busy in the kitchen preparing the meal, Tate wandered through the studio. Dressed impeccably in tailored Prada, he quietly studied the photographs before turning his attention to Charles and his friends, David, Philip, and George, who were gathered nearby, talking and laughing among themselves. By the time everyone gathered in the dining room, the table was overflowing with Korean dishes. In the center sat a sizzling platter of bulgogi, surrounded by galbi, marinated beef short ribs, dak galbi, spicy stir-fried chicken, japchae, sweet potato glass noodles with vegetables and beef, and bibimbap, a colorful mixture of rice, vegetables, and eggs waiting to be stirred together. Smaller dishes of kimchi, pickled radish, seasoned spinach, bean sprouts, and cucumber salad filled every space on the table. "Wow," David said with a grin, "I don't think I've ever seen this much food outside of a restaurant." Loretta laughed as she carried over another bowl. "Trust me, this is Chloe showing restraint." "Restraint?" George asked, raising an eyebrow. "If my mother had cooked," Chloe replied, "you'd need another table." Everyone chuckled as they helped themselves to the food. Charles glanced toward Tate. "You always liked japchae, go ahead before David eats all of it." David scooped another serving onto his plate without apology. Too late. "I make no promises," he said with a smile. For the first time that evening, the corner of Tate's mouth twitched into the faintest smile, though he remained mostly quiet as he filled his plate. Philip sampled the bulgogi and nodded approvingly. "This is incredible. Loretta, did you make the marinade?" "Chloe and I did," Loretta answered. Charles was banned from the kitchen after nearly setting a dish towel on fire last Thanksgiving. "That happened one time," Charles protested. "It happened twice," Chloe corrected. George laughed. "I think the statute of limitations has expired. You're never living that down." The table erupted in laughter, and even Tate let out a soft, reluctant chuckle before taking another bite. After dinner, Chloe returned with dessert. She placed bowls of bingsu topped with fresh strawberries on the table alongside warm hotteok filled with cinnamon and brown sugar. There were also delicate yakwa honey cookies, colorful songpyeon rice cakes, and bowls of fresh Asian pears and grapes. "I don't know how I'm supposed to eat any of this," Philip said, looking at the desserts. "I'm already full." "That's what everyone says," Loretta replied, setting another plate in front of him. "Then somehow it all disappears." "I guess it's my civic duty to help," David said as he reached for a hotteok. Charles shook his head with a laugh. "You're always willing to make sacrifices." For a few brief moments, the room felt lighter. The conversation drifted from food to travel, favorite restaurants, and Charles's latest photography projects. Although Tate spoke only when someone asked him a direct question, the tension that had followed him into the house eased just enough for him to feel, if only for the length of the meal, like he belonged at the table. After dinner, Charles offered to show Tate his photography studio. It had become something of a tradition whenever friends or family visited. If Tate happened to find a photograph of a celebrity he admired, Charles would open it in Photoshop and jokingly edit Tate into the picture, creating a surprisingly convincing image that always got a laugh. "I've got everyone from actors to musicians in here," Charles said proudly as they walked down the hallway. "If you see someone you like, I'll make it look like the two of you have been best friends for years." Tate gave a faint smile. "That sounds dangerous." "It is," Charles replied with a grin. "I've fooled more than a few people." David, Philip, and George followed them into the studio, curious to see where Charles did most of his work. The red safe light was glowing when Charles stepped inside. He reached over to the wall and flipped on the main switch, flooding the room with bright white light. "That's better," he said. The studio was filled with professional cameras, lenses, tripods, lighting equipment, computers, printers, framed photographs, and shelves lined with albums from decades of work. "Just try not to touch anything," Charles said with a friendly smile. "I've got some photographic chemicals sitting out, and I'd rather you didn't accidentally irritate your fingers or knock over something expensive." "No promises," David joked. Charles pointed a finger at him. "I'm serious, cameras I can replace, some of these negatives I can't." The room fell quiet as Tate slowly wandered toward the wall of celebrity portraits, taking them in one by one. Charles' portfolio was vast, spanning 10 years of work, and his reputation kept him in constant demand. I wandered through the studio slowly, taking in the framed portraits, stacks of negatives, and unfinished projects spread across long wooden tables. The room smelled faintly of chemicals, dust, and old paper. Soft jazz drifted from a radio in the corner while dim overhead lights reflected against polished camera lenses arranged carefully on metal shelves. "You'll never believe this," Charles said as he carefully lifted a framed photograph from a shelf. "This was taken by my mentor at UCLA. He photographed Marilyn Monroe, John F. Kennedy, and Charlie Chaplin during his career. It was an incredible honor to learn from someone with that kind of talent and experience." Charles looked down at the photograph with a nostalgic smile. "He's the reason I was able to break into celebrity photography in the first place. He opened doors for me that I never could have opened on my own. Last year he passed away from colon cancer. It was a terrible loss." He paused for a moment before continuing. "Before he died, he left me all of his photography equipment and a huge collection of industry contacts. It was his way of making sure I had every opportunity to succeed. I'll always be grateful for that." Every wall seemed to hold a different story. There were photographs of actors laughing between takes, politicians frozen behind practiced smiles, and businessmen standing confidently in expensive suits beside private jets and towering office buildings. Some images looked glamorous, while others captured people in moments that felt strangely vulnerable, as if Charles had photographed them when they forgot anyone was watching. Charles moved through the studio with quiet confidence, occasionally stopping to explain where a picture had been taken or what had happened behind the scenes. He spoke about photography less like a profession and more like an obsession. According to him, a camera revealed the version of people they tried hardest to hide. As I continued looking around, I realized the studio wasn't simply a workplace. It was a museum of secrets, ambition, vanity, and power preserved in thousands of photographs. I picked up a photo and turned it over in my hands, studying the lighting, the angles. It was undeniable that the work was technically impressive, the shadows, the contrast. The way the lens seemed to pull the viewer into the frame, but I couldn't shake a mixture of awe and discomfort. I hated photographs, Tate thought. Ever since he was a little boy, he had hated being forced to stand still and pose in awkward, unnatural positions while someone told him to smile. Uncle Joey liked video photography while Terrence was a photography wizard. He loved parties, celebrations, and capturing every milestone on film. Throughout Tate's childhood, Terrence had photographed him countless times, while Tate silently wished the camera would disappear. As he grew older, his dislike only deepened. He hated cameras. He hated paparazzi. He hated being placed at the center of attention where strangers felt entitled to stare, judge, and speculate about his life. To Tate, photographs served only one purpose: to become ammunition for gossip columns and glossy, scuzzy magazines that twisted reality into whatever lie sold the most copies. "So, these are for magazines?" I asked, placing a few prints back on the table. "Some of them," George replied. "Others are private commissions. Clients want art, they get art. Simple as that." He smiled, leaning against the wall. "The world isn't all buttoned-up dinners and speeches. Some people want beauty that's raw, even provocative." I nodded slowly, glancing at Chloe. She seemed unbothered, relaxed, like this was normal household scenery. She flipped through another stack, her eyes scanning quickly, noting things I barely registered. Your brothers really get it, I said finally. They see everything, don't they? Everything, she said with a small laugh. They capture what most people can't or won't look at. Light, shadow, form, expression, all of it. It's what makes them good at what they do. I put down the photos carefully, stepping back. The studio smelled faintly of chemicals, paper, and polish, a mixture that somehow made the whole scene feel both professional and intimate. I realized then that this was a different kind of world from mine or Chloe's, one that thrived on exposure, attention, and interpretation. "And you're okay with this?" I asked, nodding toward the prints again. Chloe shrugged. "They're my brothers, their work isn't about me, I know who I am, what I want. Art doesn't define people the way some think it does." I watched her a moment, noticing the calm in her demeanor, and felt a little envy. The confidence to exist comfortably in a room full of something so raw, so unfiltered, was foreign to me. I still carried the weight of observation, of privacy, of boundaries, of the invisible walls I'd built around my life for safety. Charles handed me another photo, this one a carefully lit portrait of a man standing in an empty hallway, light cascading across his torso. "See," he said, "beauty is everywhere, even in places where people don't expect it, even in shadows." I studied the image and felt a flicker of recognition, an acknowledgement that the world could be harsh and indulgent, invasive and liberating, all at once. It wasn't the first time I'd confronted something I wasn't sure I was ready to understand, and it wouldn't be the last. I nodded, placing the photo gently back on the pile. "I think I get it," I said, "at least a little." Chloe smiled at me, brushing my arm lightly. "It's okay if you don't get all of it, that's why we have cameras, lenses, and light, they do the talking for us." "Here's the celeb white party photos of last spring's hits," Philip said, flipping through a stack and holding them out. I raised an eyebrow. "White party?" I asked cautiously. He laughed, a low, easy sound. "Yeah, it's a male-only party. Guys show up in all white shirts, pants, shoes, everything, and, well, they dance, they mingle, you know," he said, letting the last words hang in the air, implying more than he spoke. I blinked, trying to process it. "And what exactly happens there?" Charles smirked. "What do you think? Guys dance, drink, fuck, and flirt. Some hook up, some don't leave the bedroom." He shrugged casually, as if it were just another networking event. I looked at the photos again. Men laughing, hands on each other, sometimes more than hands. The lighting was perfect, the angles carefully chosen, and I realized it wasn't meant to shock, it was meant to capture. Every glance, every touch, every small gesture of intimacy frozen in glossy perfection. "So, people pay to get their photos taken doing this?" I asked, more curious than judgmental. George nodded. "Some of them do, some just want memories, some want a portfolio, some like the thrill of being seen. Trust me, it's not all about money, it's about the scene, the vibe, the lifestyle." I leaned back slightly, feeling a mix of intrigue and discomfort. I don't think I'd ever fit in there. Philip laughed again. "Most people don't, it's not for everyone, but you'd be surprised who enjoys it once they let go of judgment." Chloe, standing nearby, added lightly, "It's just another form of expression. Some people dance, some people wear the white, some people find freedom in, well, intimacy. It doesn't mean anything about the rest of their lives, it's a choice, not a label." I nodded slowly, letting that sink in. "So it's consensual, adult, and carefully curated." "Yes," David said firmly. "Everything you see here is safe, organized, and voluntary. That's why we photograph it. It's art, not exploitation. Everyone's aware of the boundaries." I studied the photos again, noticing the smiles, the hands, the subtle glances. There was energy there, life that felt chaotic but somehow elegant. And for the first time, I understood that some worlds existed entirely separate from mine, and that was okay. "Interesting," I said finally, "not a world I'd explore personally, but fascinating." George winked. "That's the point. Fascination without participation is often enough." I laughed quietly. "Yeah, that's enough for me." "Hey, look at this," Charles laughed, holding up a photo. "These are from that gay party on the boat the week before you got married to my sister, Tate." I groaned, immediately tense. I hated gay people. "This one's great," Charles said, holding up another photo. My stomach dropped. My eyes caught the image and my heart lurched. 3 men were intertwined in ways I didn't want to process. My mind went cold as I scanned the faces. Men of various backgrounds were fucking or getting fucked in a boat bunk. And then I recognized one. Mark. My gut twisted. The gay man I had always despised, always feared for Noah's safety, was clearly in the photo fucking a fag. I never had proof that Mark had seduced Noah. Tate thought, if I ever found proof I'd kill him. Noah had always been sweet, kind, and somewhat naive. In Tate's mind, he had never deserved to be manipulated or taken advantage of by someone who ignored boundaries. Decent adult men didn't prey on younger, more vulnerable men, especially young boys. Men who weren't predators would never be attracted to another man nor find a man attractive. Only pedophiles and perverts were attracted to their own gender, and if Tate ever caught Mark sniffing around Noah, even now, he would pick up a baseball bat. Charles wandered to the far corner of the studio with a faint smirk on his face, casually flipping through a stack of photographs that captured people in awkward predicaments, humorous accidents, and occasionally intimate moments from private photo shoots. Some had become memorable magazine covers while others had never been published. Nearby, David, Philip, and George gathered around a shoebox overflowing with old Polaroids from Charles's early assignments. They laughed as they sorted through snapshots of celebrities backstage, candid moments between takes, and behind-the-scenes images from parties, premieres, and publicity events. I forgot I even had these, Charles said over his shoulder. Some of those are almost 15 years old, just don't bend them, they're one of a kind. We're trying, David replied, grinning as he held up another Polaroid. You've documented half of Hollywood. In the half that wishes I hadn't, Charles said with a laugh. I directed my attention back to the photograph of Mark. A surge of disgust washed over me, and before I could stop myself, I spat on it. I hated that man with every ounce of my being. If only he would disappear. But he never did. For the past 10 years he had lingered like a bad case of malaria, flaring up just when I thought I was rid of him. He always managed to reappear at Sunday dinners, family gatherings, birthdays, or holiday celebrations. Wherever Noah was, Mark never seemed to be far behind, as though he had appointed himself a permanent fixture in Noah's life. And then my eyes scanned the face of the fag who was getting gang-fucked. My chest hitched. The man being fucked on the cruise ship bunk was Noah. Noah. I froze, my hands gripping the edge of the table as a hot wave of emotion slammed into me: rage, fear, betrayal, and helplessness. My mind spun with the memories of our past, of every moment I had tried to shield him, every night I had slept outside his door, every fear I had carried silently for decades. Charles glanced at me, laughing, unaware of the storm raging inside. Man, this was wild. You've got to see this angle, perfect lighting. Charles stepped in front of me, holding out 5 more photographs. Each photograph showed Mark fucking Noah from behind in a room crowded with 5 other men who were cheering. At first glance, it looked as though Noah had gone on the gay cruise simply to relax and enjoy himself, or perhaps because Mark had persuaded him to go. I couldn't know what had really happened, but seeing the photographs only fueled the resentment that had been simmering inside me for years. I didn't want Noah on display in front of strangers. I shook my head violently. Stop, I said, voice low, sharp. Take it down, don't show me that again. Relax, Charles said, slightly confused. It's just a party. No, I said, my voice rising despite myself. You don't understand, you don't get it, that's Noah, my buddy Noah. I froze the moment Charles held up the last photo of the gay cruise. My chest went tight, my stomach lurched, and for a second I couldn't breathe. Noah. There he was, unmistakable, my companion, the boy I had protected for decades, the one I had slept outside his door to be close to at night, lying there in a bed in a position I couldn't reconcile with the person I knew as Noah. Around him were a dozen men and Mark, my fists clenched before I even realized it, my nails dug into my palms. Noah had lied for 24 years about his sexuality right to my face every day I've known him. Perhaps he hid it because I didn't like gays. He didn't have to tell me, but it felt like he stabbed me in the back by lying that he was straight. Mark actually fucked Noah and he said it was only a kiss. The world tilted, my mind couldn't process it fast enough. Anger, shock, betrayal, and jealousy, these emotions all hit me at once, each one sharper than the last. Every protective instinct I had ever carried surged forward like a living thing, demanding action. How could my oldest, dearest former buddy lie so easily to me for decades, making me believe he was something he wasn't? I looked at Charles and I saw him smirking, thinking it was funny, thinking this was some joke. My vision narrowed. my entire body vibrated with rage. "That's your Noah, huh? Your friend? What a dirty fag, you didn't know he was a fag, that's funny," Charles sneered, spitting the words at me like they were fire. I couldn't speak at first, my heart pounded, my chest ached. I felt the old helplessness, the same one I had carried every night when I had slept outside Noah's door, mixed with a new, hotter, more violent fury. He wasn't a fucking object, he wasn't some trophy for their amusement, he was Noah. And you, Charles, you had no right to joke about someone who was exposed like this. "Take it down?" I yelled, my voice cutting through the laughter and jeers of the men around us. My hands shot out and grabbed the photos, shoving them toward him with more force than I realized I had. "Do you hear me? Take it down." The guys around us started laughing cruelly and loudly. "Fag," one shouted. "Look at that queer," another jeered. "He's really into that, huh?" I felt hot all over, a wave of nausea and rage washing through me. I was shaking, barely able to contain myself. Every word they spat, every laugh, every slur, it was like nails on a chalkboard to my soul. Every one of them reminded me of what Noah had survived, what he had carried silently, and every moment I hadn't been able to protect him. I hated exploitation photos, and it triggered my anxiety attacks. These Polaroids reminded me of a storage unit I rented outside town. I could feel the old jealousy flare. Why wasn't I the one by his side, protecting him from men like Mark who wanted to use him? Why wasn't I the only one in that space, the only one he trusted with his body? He trusted me for years to never take advantage of his innocence. Rage and sorrow tangled together. I couldn't even focus on the present. My mind was spiraling back decades to the tiny, scared boy who had trusted me completely, and to the man who had grown from that boy, strong, confident, unbroken, and yet here exposed, violated in a way I had no power to undo. Just because Noah wasn't close to me anymore didn't impact how protective I felt towards him. I slammed my fist into Charles' jaw hard. The sound echoed in the studio. His head snapped back, his hands clutching his face. He staggered, dazed. "Don't you ever take pictures of him like that again without his consent," I yelled, seeing red, my voice almost unrecognizable even to me. "Do you hear me? He's my buddy, you don't get to use him or look at him like that, you don't get to treat him like a piece of meat." Charles blinked, smirking through the pain for a second, but then his expression faltered when he saw me. I wasn't just angry, I was a storm. I was the face of every night I had spent awake outside Noah's door. I was every time I had carried him in my mind, fearing the world would take him. I was every wound I had tried to hide, every scar he didn't know I bore for him. "That's your Noah, huh? Your friend?" Charles spat again, louder this time, with more venom. "What a dirty fag. This party boat was for gays who have been out for years to their friends. He must not think much of you if you didn't know." The words made my stomach twist. I felt sick and hot at the same time. Rage coiled in my chest, pure and raw. My vision blurred, and all I could see was Noah lying there, unprotected, violated in front of these men, and my fists itched to do something, anything. I grabbed the pile of photos, shoving them toward the pocket in my briefcase with every ounce of strength I had, as if I could erase what I had seen just by force. "All of this gone," I growled. "You don't touch him, you don't speak about him, you don't look at him like that ever again." The laughter around us faltered, some of it replaced by murmurs. Charles swore under his breath, shaking his head, clutching his jaw, pale. I didn't care if I got thrown out, arrested, or worse. I had never felt this protective, this furious, this helpless and powerful all at once. I stormed toward the door, throwing a few $100 bills on the table to cover the mess. I didn't wait for thanks, I didn't want excuses, I just needed to leave. I needed air, I needed to get out before I lost control completely. Outside, the night air hit me like a shock. My lungs burned, my hands trembled, and my body was still vibrating with adrenaline and rage. I had just seen my ex-buddy treated like a piece of meat, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. The way Mark had been there, the way those other men had leered, the way Noah had been exposed and used. It wasn't just anger, it was betrayal too. Betrayal of trust, of years of protection, of silent promises I had carried for decades. I hated that he had been put in that situation, and I hated that I hadn't been able to stop it before it ever happened. Noah had lied right to my face, saying he was straight dating girls while sneaking off to gay cruises. I thought about Noah, his life, his independence, the confident man he had become. He had grown beyond the scared, awkward boy I had spent years guarding, but that didn't make this hurt any less. Seeing him like that, even in a photograph, stabbed me with jealousy and grief. I wanted him safe, respected, and untouchable. Not objectified, not laughed at, not reduced to someone else's entertainment or easy fuck. And the slurs, every time I heard them in the studio, every time someone shouted fag or queer like it was a joke, I felt the old fear flare up. I remembered every insult, every night of walking him to our home, every look I had given anyone who dared threaten him. And now, decades later, those protective instincts were still there, still raw. I stumbled down the street, the photos clutched against my chest, shaking. My vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. I wanted to scream at the world, at myself, at Charles, at Mark. I wanted to find Noah and tell him I would never let anyone touch him like that, even if it meant confronting the entire world. I couldn't. He didn't need me policing him anymore. He was strong, confident, independent. But that didn't stop the ache, the jealousy, the fury at the violation, the betrayal. Not by Noah, never by Noah, by the world that still saw him as a thing, as property, as a joke. I kept walking, faster now, the city lights blurring around me. The adrenaline was fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. I thought about all the nights I had spent outside his door, the nights I had watched over him silently, the moments I had gone without sleep to protect him from dangers he didn't even know existed. And I realized that no one would ever see the magnitude of what I had carried for him. But I did. And I always would. I looked at the photos again, even as I shoved them into my bag. Noah didn't deserve this, he never had, and no one, no matter how smug, no matter how cruel, would make me think otherwise. I didn't care about Charles, about Mark, about the slurs, about the laughter. They didn't know Noah as I did. They didn't understand him. They didn't see the scared boy he had been, the trust he had given me, the life he had fought to claim for himself. I would protect that Noah, his body, his soul, his life, from anything I could reach. And if anyone dared challenge that again, they would see exactly what protective fury meant. I kept walking, chest heaving, shaking, raw with anger, betrayal, jealousy, and love, knowing that even as the photos faded from my immediate vision, they would never fade from my memory. And that memory would fuel me to be ready, always ready to defend him again. Noah was not a piece of meat. He never would be, not to me, not to anyone. And if the world didn't understand that, they were about to learn. I kept walking, the city lights blurry streaks around me, but my mind wasn't on the street, it was on him. Noah. He lied. The thought slammed into me harder than any punch I'd thrown at Charles. Every step I took, every heartbeat carried the weight of that one truth. He had lied to me about everything, about what he had done, what he had allowed, what he had endured. He had let me see him as safe, as untouchable as the boy I could protect. And yet, that foe told the truth my ears had refused to hear. I remembered the nights he had shut me out. The first time I had slept outside his door, shivering, heart-pounding, wondering what I had done wrong, thinking the world had finally broken him. I had carried him in my mind, every breath he took, every shiver, every terrified glance when something went bump in the night. Every time he had rejected me, pushed me away, or lashed out, I had thought it was anger at me. It wasn't just me. I remembered the nights when he had cried silently and I had traced the outline of his body on the floor, wishing I could take the fear into myself. I remembered the times I had stayed awake, listening to footsteps in the hallway, ready to block anything that might reach him. I remembered how every little sound in the dark made me flinch, knowing what the world wanted to do to him. And he had lied to me, lied so I would let my guard down, lied so he could appear safe, lied so that I could think he had grown strong enough to survive without my constant vigilance. For 26 years, my body slept and curled snugly around a fag in my bed. Sweet Noah liked Dick, and I never suspected. I could see the betrayal clearly. Every tiny moment played in my mind like a film in slow motion. The first time he had pushed me out of the room and slammed the door. The way my chest had tightened, the way I had waited outside in silence, shivering on the cold carpet, listening for the slightest noise. The nights I had heard him crying quietly in the dark, every sob piercing me like a dagger I couldn't remove. The way he had clung to me in secret, the way he had let me shield him, protect him, and yet never once told me the full truth. Every lie had been calculated to keep me from knowing what he was enduring, from seeing the danger he allowed in his life. And now I knew. The photo, burned into my mind, didn't just show him being violated, it showed the secret he had carried from me, from the world, from everyone who claimed to care. He had survived on his own, hidden the truth, made choices I couldn't approve of, and yet, he had thrived. I stopped walking for a moment, gripping the railing of a bridge over the river. The city lights shimmered on the water, but I couldn't see them. All I saw was him. He lied to me. The fury returned, hotter this time, sharper. My fists clenched, nails digging into my palms. I wanted to shake him, scream at him, punch him for letting me believe he was untouchable. My body wanted violence, not toward him but toward the world that had put him there, toward Mark, toward every man who had touched him, toward Charles, toward anyone who had ever dared to look at him like an object. I remembered every time I had thought I was protecting him and failed. Every night outside his door, every time I had warned someone away, every time I had believed the danger had passed, only to realize the truth had been hidden from me. Jealousy mixed with anger. How dare he lie to me? How dare he hide this part of his life from the one person who had given everything to keep him safe? I had carried him in my mind and heart for decades, and he had let me think I had been enough. I wanted to scream his name into the empty street to tell him how furious I was, how hurt I was, how every night of vigilance, every fear, every moment of exhaustion had been for nothing, or at least, for something I hadn't understood. I could see him as a child, smiling innocently, trusting me completely. And I could see him now in that photo, exposed, taken advantage of, and yet still somehow whole. How had he survived the world so unscathed while lying to me? I could feel tears pricking at the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not now. I didn't want anyone to see me weak, not after decades of carrying him in my mind. My fury was raw, jagged, and endless. I thought about the first time he had driven a car, how proud he had been, and how I had secretly worried the world would break him before he even made it out of the driveway. I thought about every hand that had ever reached for him without his consent, every threat, every moment of danger. And now I saw him with Mark and 5 other men, vulnerable, exposed, lied about, and my chest burned. I remembered every word, every moment, every tiny incident of his childhood and adolescence. I remembered how I had always believed I was shielding him, how I had always thought he was safe under my protection, and I had been deceived. He had let me believe I had been enough, let me feel in control, and now I knew the truth. And yet, the truth was complicated. He had survived, he had lived. He had chosen freedom, even if it hurt me to witness it, even if it shattered my illusions of safety. I wanted to hate him, I wanted to scream at him. But beneath the fury, beneath the jealousy and betrayal, there was love. Deep, consuming, unrelenting love. Love that had carried me through decades of fear, through nights of vigilance, through every sleepless moment guarding him. Love that refused to vanish even when he had deceived me. Charles called Noah fag. No, Noah was no fag. Noah was confused. No way that sweet, trusting little boy was a pervert, a predator, or a pedophile. I pressed my palms to my face and inhaled deeply. The city moved around me. Cars honked, people walked by, indifferent to the storm in my chest. I had to let go somehow, not of him, but of the rage that threatened to consume me. I had to survive this moment just as he had survived every other danger the world had thrown at him. And I would. I would continue to carry him in my mind, in my heart, and in my vigilance. I would continue to protect what I could, even if that protection now had to be from a distance, unseen and silent. Noah had lied to me, he had hidden truths, he had survived, and now I had to survive my own fury, jealousy, heartbreak, and shock, and somehow love him through all of it. I walked towards Noah's house, the photos still clutched in my bag, my fists trembling, my mind replaying every moment, every memory, every night outside his door, every time I had believed I was enough. And I realized finally that I never had to be enough. Noah was his own person now, he had always been. But I would always be there. Always. I grabbed my phone and called my mom. "Hi, honey," she said, her voice warm, but something in her tone made my blood boil. "Is Noah gay?" I demanded, my voice sharp and hard. There was a long pause, then she stuttered, I. Her voice was hollow when I confronted her. "You knew?" I asked, disbelief dripping from my words. She hesitated, then admitted quietly, "Since he gave me an envelope after you abandoned." Every nerve in my body screamed. College, a whole decade she knew, she had known, everyone knew, and no one had told me, not my mother, not my closest friends, not anyone. I could feel the old fury rise, hotter, sharper, more consuming than anything I had felt that night at Charles' studio. This wasn't just a shock anymore, it was betrayal, layers of it. Stretching back years, hiding truths that I had lived and fought through in the dark, always protecting, always watching, always assuming I understood everything. I gritted my teeth, my fists clenching until my nails cut into my palms. Noah had carried so much alone, and the people around him had chosen to keep me blind. Why would they do that? I wanted to scream at all of them, at the universe, at the world, for daring to withhold the truth, for daring to let me think I had been the only one protecting him. I had been guarding him all those years, and no one had thought to tell me what was really happening. I leaned back, my phone still clutched in my hand, my mind racing. Every night, every fear, every memory of watching over him had been lived under a lie, and yet, even as rage consumed me, I couldn't forget the boy I had sworn to protect. I couldn't forget the man he had become. And somehow, amidst the anger and betrayal, there was still that stubborn, impossible love. The love that had kept me awake all those nights, the love that had shielded him, the love that refused to vanish, no matter how much I was left out of the truth. But this time I knew I wouldn't stay silent. I needed answers. I needed the honesty that had been denied to me for decades. And if anyone, Noah included, thought they could keep me in the dark again, they were sorely mistaken. I felt betrayed, lied to, made a fool of. Everyone knew but me. That was the part that burned the deepest. Not that Noah was gay, not even that he had a life I didn't fully understand, but that I had been excluded from the truth while believing all those years that we told each other everything. I had stood guard in the dark, thinking I was trusted, thinking I was chosen, thinking I knew him. And all the while, the people around us were carrying a secret that I was never allowed to touch. I stood there replaying it all, the memories lining up too neatly now, each one clicking into place with a sickening clarity. I'd stake my life on it. This started when Noah was 18. That's when things changed. That's when he began coming home different, quieter, distracted, and distant in a way I couldn't name at the time. I remember nights when he'd crawl into bed beside me and I'd smell something unfamiliar. Not soap, not cologne I recognized, another man. I'd noticed it more than once, that faint scent clinging to him, and every time I'd asked, he brushed it off. "You're imagining things," he'd said, or "I was out late," or "You're being paranoid again." And I believed him. I believed him because I trusted him with my life. Because I had built my entire sense of safety around the idea that Noah wouldn't lie to me. Because the thought that he could look me in the eye and deny something so real never even crossed my mind. Now it all came rushing back, the way he'd turn his face away when I leaned too close, the way he'd tense if I touched his shoulder at the wrong moment, the way he'd shower some nights immediately, scrubbing himself raw. I had thought it was trauma, fear, something I needed to protect him from. I never considered that he was protecting me from the truth. Mark, the name tasted bitter in my mouth. Mark had been there the whole time, lurking on the edges of our lives, smiling too easily, touching Noah too familiarly. I told myself I was being irrational, jealous, damaged. Everyone said I overreacted, that I saw threats where there were none. But I wasn't wrong. Noah had been going to him, choosing him, and lying to me about it, right to my face night after night while I slept beside him, thinking I was still his safe place. Noah had been bent over like a girl so that the pervert could penetrate him. That was the humiliation of it, not just the loss but the realization that I'd been the last to know, that my vigilance, my sacrifice, my devotion had been built on incomplete truths, that the people who claimed to care about me, my mother, Susie, everyone, had decided I couldn't handle the reality. I laughed once, sharp and humorless, alone in the room. Everyone thought they were protecting me. What they really did was strip me of my agency. They let me live in a lie. And Noah, God, Noah had learned how to lie so well, learned how to slip back into bed, how to meet my eyes, how to reassure me with that soft voice I trusted more than my own instincts. I wasn't angry because he had a life. I was angry because he took my choice away. Because he let me believe I was the problem, that my fear was irrational, that my questions were unfair. I pressed my palms to my eyes, breathing through the tightness in my chest. I still loved him, that hadn't changed. But love didn't erase the truth. The boy I thought I knew had been living a parallel life, and everyone else had known how to navigate it but me. And that realization, more than jealousy, more than rage, was what finally broke something open inside my chest. That's how it finally landed in my gut, heavy and undeniable. Every time Noah left the house without me, he wasn't just going for a walk or meeting a friend or taking space the way he claimed. He was hooking up with guys behind my back. While I stayed home, convincing myself I was learning to give him freedom, he was building an entire life I wasn't allowed to see. The thought that kept circling, ugly and relentless, was this: Noah must think I'm a straight fool. Someone easy to lie to, someone predictable, someone so busy guarding the door that I never thought to look out the window. I replayed every argument we'd ever had about Mark, every time my skin crawled when that guy was around, every time I said I didn't trust him and Noah snapped back too fast, too hard. I'd thought it was loyalty. I'd thought Noah was defending a friend. Noah was defending the man who was fucking him. The pervert Mark had dared to thrust in Noah's ass while Tate's bedfellow allowed Mark to violate his body. That realization hit harder than the photos. Harder than the laughter in that studio. Harder even than my mother's silence or excuses on the phone, because this one wasn't about outsiders misusing Noah. This was Noah choosing to keep me in the dark and letting me doubt myself. I had blamed my instincts for years, told myself my anger was pathological, my jealousy irrational, my fear something broken inside me. Every time Noah said, "You're wrong," I folded. Every time he said, "You're imagining things," I swallowed it. I learned to distrust my own body, my own nose, my own memory. And all the while I was right. I wasn't imagining the smell. I wasn't imagining the distance. I wasn't imagining the shift in him when he came back late, when his eyes wouldn't meet mine, when he'd shower like he was trying to erase something. I had been standing in the truth the whole time, alone, while everyone else quietly stepped around it. What cut the deepest wasn't even the perverted, unnatural sex Noah was involved with and the men he was attracted to. It was the contempt that Noah showed towards me with his implied lie. The idea that he could look at me and think, "This dumb straight guy I've fooled won't figure it out. He never does." That he could rely on my loyalty, my protectiveness, my need to believe in him and use it as cover made me enraged. I had spent years shaping my life around keeping him safe, being the constant. And meanwhile he was slipping past me with practiced ease, choosing men who never had to see the fear underneath, never had to hold the weight I carried. Mark got the version of Noah who was honest. I got the version that lied. And that was the betrayal I couldn't soften, couldn't rationalize, couldn't excuse with trauma or fear or love. Because whatever else Noah had been doing to survive, he had made one thing very clear without ever saying it out loud. He trusted everyone else with the truth before he trusted me. Noah, that lying, deceitful, manipulative cunt who'd hidden his truth for 24 goddamn years while pretending to be straight, chasing skirts and commitments while his eyes lingered on me a beat too long, his touches electric in the shadows, was a bastard. He'd gaslit me into doubting my own repressed desires, laughing it off as bromance, all while those nights we'd almost crossed the line burned fresh in my memory. Now, the betrayal hit harder, the closet he'd locked himself in cracking open to reveal the fraud he'd always been. I kept walking away from Charles's studio, fists clenched. In my head the scene played out vivid and vicious. I'd corner Noah in some dingy bar we'd haunted as young boys, the air thick with stale beer and unspoken sins. He'd turn, that fake smile faltering as I grabbed his collar, yanking him close until our breaths mingled hot and hostile. 24 years of lies, I'd snarl, my voice low and lethal, shoving him back against the wall, his body thudding with the impact. His eyes, those deceptive blues, would widen in panic, but I'd be on him, knees pinning his legs, my weight crushing down as my hands shot to his throat. Fingers splayed wide, I'd clamp down hard, feeling the delicate column of his neck yield under my grip, tendons straining as I squeezed. His pulse hammered wildly against my palms, a frantic drumbeat counting down his deceit. "You hit it all," I'd hiss, thumbs digging into the hollow of his throat, watching his face flush red, then purple, veins popping like ropes under his skin. He'd gasp, mouth gaping for air that wouldn't come, hands scrabbling at my arms, nails scraping futilely as his body bucked beneath me. The power surged through me, intoxicating, my cock twitching against his hip from the raw dominance, the years of manipulation flipping into this moment of control. He'd choke out fragments, "Tate, stop," but I'd throttle tighter, cutting off the words, the lies, everything. His chest heaved in desperate heaves, ribs rattling under my hold, eyes bulging as tears streamed down his cheeks. For every gaslight, every laugh, and every lie said to my face, I'd crush harder, feeling his larynx crunch faintly, his struggles turning to weak twitches. "I hate fags," I'd hiss while strangling his pretty slim throat. His hidden hunger now reduced to this, life slipping away in my grasp, his body going limp, that secret he'd buried for decades dying with him. I'd hold on until the light faded from his stare, his deceitful form still and silent, the revenge a dark satisfaction coiling deep in my core. I exhaled sharply, the fantasy leaving me breathless, heart pounding. Chloe at Charles' home hadn't a clue, but I shrugged her off, the rage still simmering. Noah would face this storm one choke at a time until the truth he'd hidden choked him out for good. Chloe and I had been married 21 months before Noah's lies came crashing in from nowhere, uninvited and catastrophic, like a storm I hadn't seen on any forecast. I kept the photos folded in my bag as I walked home, the paper edges digging into my side with every step, a quiet reminder that the ground under my life wasn't solid anymore. I remember noticing small things on that walk, the way the air smelled faintly of rain, the uneven rhythm of my footsteps, the fact that my hands wouldn't stop trembling. I told myself to slow down, to breathe, to be a husband walking home after work, not a man carrying proof that his past had never really been past. It was time to see if the man I had promised to stand by deserved that loyalty, or if the time had come to let go. I remembered the time his lips accidentally touched mine. We had been dancing at a high school prom, laughing at some stupid joke in a hallway, and then it happened, an accidental brush, a fleeting contact that lingered longer than it should have. He had pulled back immediately, eyes wide, cheeks flushed crimson. "Sorry," he'd muttered, embarrassed, like he'd crossed a line he didn't even know existed. I had laughed it off at the time, feeling my own chest tighten in a way I didn't understand then. Now, remembering it as we were teens, that memory stung sharper than ever. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was a reminder of how close I had been to him, how much I had trusted him, and how utterly he had lied to me in return. The photos, the lies, the secrets, all of it collided with that memory, a brush of lips, a moment of connection, and yet I had never really had him. Not fully, not when it mattered. I could feel my hands clenching again, fists tight at my sides. That memory, sweet and fleeting, had been used against me by omission. He had let me believe in innocence and trust, and then he had hidden everything else behind a practiced smile. I hated him for it, I loved him for it, and the combination made the fury inside me almost unbearable. It wasn't the accidental touch that haunted me. It was the realization that everything after it had been shaped by lies. Every time I thought we were close, he had been somewhere else, secret, hidden, untouchable in ways I had never expected. And yet, even now, my chest tightened just thinking about that accidental kiss. It reminded me of what had been possible, what had been stolen, and what I still wanted even if I couldn't trust him anymore. I remember the first time I noticed him like that, aroused, caught off guard in the shower. He had been so embarrassed, turning bright red, fumbling to hide himself like it was the most shameful thing in the world. And I realized why. It wasn't just a random thing. It was because of me, because I was a man, because somehow he had felt something he didn't know how to name, something that made him panic and blush and retreat into himself. I didn't laugh, I didn't tease him, I just stood there, frozen in my own shock, feeling the pulse of something unspoken between us. That moment, awkward, electric, confusing, was one of the first times I truly understood the weight of what he was carrying. He was embarrassed because he had feelings he didn't know how to handle. He was ashamed because he thought those feelings were wrong, dangerous, or mine to judge, and I hated the world for making him feel that way. I hated that he had to hide from me even then. Even as a teen, his blush, panic, and quick retreat stayed with me. They reminded me of his fragility, his guarded nature, and my urge to protect him, even when I didn't understand why. It wasn't just awkwardness or going through puberty, it was a signal, truth neither of us could name then. Now, looking back, it's clear, tension started here, shadowing our lives, choices, betrayals, and hidden things. Cute Noah had always been embarrassed around me, even as a kid. I remember the way he'd squirm when I got too close, how his face would turn pink, how he'd try to laugh it off when I teased him. It was adorable, cute, infuriating, and confusing all at once. Sometimes I wondered if he actually liked it. Did he? I couldn't tell. He mentioned once, years later, that I had moved in my sleep, crawling on top of him. I had no memory of it, just the echoes of his laughter and his embarrassment as he recounted it, but it left me thinking. Was it innocent curiosity, comfort, something more? Did he feel anything he didn't know how to name? I never asked, I didn't want to scare him, and he never volunteered details beyond that fleeting memory. Still, it stayed with me, that mix of innocence, awkwardness, and unspoken tension. Cute Noah, embarrassed and flustered around me, always aware of me in a way that made my chest tighten even when I couldn't understand why. Even now, the thought makes me ache. He was so young, so vulnerable, so incapable of saying what he felt, and yet somehow the truth of him was already there, hidden under blushes, giggles, and the faintest brush of skin. I always knew Noah was infatuated with me. Hell, half of Lo's angels loved me or envied me with infatuation and lust, so it wasn't weird that Noah looked up to me. It was in the little things he did, the way he laughed at my dumb jokes, the way he always tried to be close even when I didn't notice. His heart and feelings were obvious. His affection was impossible to miss. But I had never imagined he wanted my body in the same way everyone did. That part of him, desire, longing, curiosity, had been invisible to me until I saw glimpses of it, caught the blushes, the hesitation, the way he moved around me like he was constantly aware of a line he both feared and wanted to cross. It made my chest tighten in ways I hadn't expected. I didn't feel anger, not at first. I felt stunned, confused, intrigued, afraid too, because I had no idea how to respond, how to navigate the intensity of it. The realization hit me slowly like a tide creeping up, inevitable and unstoppable. Noah's love for me wasn't just emotional. It was physical too, and he had carried it silently for years, unsure, embarrassed, and afraid. And suddenly, all those teenage memories, the blushes, the accidental touches, the way he avoided my gaze when I got too close made sense. They weren't just awkward, they were hints, fragments of a truth he hadn't dared to speak aloud. I didn't know what to do with that knowledge. I didn't know if I should feel honored, overwhelmed, or furious at the secrecy. All I knew was that it changed everything I thought I understood about him, about us, and about what had been simmering beneath the surface all along. I walked to Noah's house, every step tightening something in my chest. The closer I got, the angrier I became, like the ground itself was feeding it, pulling it up through my feet and into my spine. How could he lie to me? When did Noah know who and what he was? If the answer was before yesterday, the reality of how deep that lie goes is unimaginable. Susie knew forever and Mom knew. I felt left out, humiliated, and made to feel like a fool. Noah had intentionally kept his sexuality a secret, obviously due to my anti-LGBT views, but I thought our bond was more important and stronger than philosophies. I remember Noah verbally confirming his straightness a dozen times since college. He outright lied to me, and Mark probably knew. Noah had lived a parallel life or lifestyle I hadn't a clue about. How could I be sure of anything anymore when my closest confidant fucked guys while lying about it? Was this the wall I sensed 10 years ago during our stay at Brown, or was it something else entirely? I needed to confront Noah before my imagination played tricks on me. I hadn't a clue what to think, and Noah held the answers he chose to never divulge to me since we met. 24 years was too many moments to throw away on something as stupid as being gay. I hated gay people, but if Noah was one, I'd make an exception for him. I didn't have much of a choice when I need Noah in my life. I trusted him. God, I trusted him more than anyone. I had trusted him with my past, with my silence, with the parts of myself I never let anyone touch. And I had believed naively, apparently, that he trusted me too. I would have died for Noah. I'd have sacrificed my own safety and conscience to make him happy and safe. I told my own mother that I wouldn't hesitate to kill for him or stand in the way of disaster to keep his body safe. The streetlights blurred as memories flooded in uninvited. Late nights, shared jokes, the way he used to lean into me without thinking. The way I had always assumed that whatever we didn't say out loud was still understood. I felt like a fool. Everyone else had known. My mother, Susie, Mark, maybe half the damn world, and I was the last one standing in the dark, nodding along, believing in a version of Noah that had been carefully edited for my consumption. Even the nude gay guests on that boat knew Noah's secret instead of me. It wasn't just that he'd lied, it was that he'd chosen not to tell me, over and over again. Every time he looked me in the eye, every time I defended him, every time I thought we were being honest because we were close. My jaw clenched as I reached his block. I could already picture his house, the porch light, the door I'd knocked on 1,000 times before without fear. Tonight it looked different, smaller, like something fragile that might shatter the moment I opened my mouth. I didn't know what I was going to say yet. I only knew I couldn't walk away again. I'd promised him once that I wouldn't bail when things got ugly. This was ugly. I stopped at the edge of his yard and took a breath, my hands shaking despite myself. I wasn't here to scream. I wasn't here to disappear. I was here for the truth, finally, and whatever it cost us both. I was crying by the time I crossed his yard. I didn't bother wiping my face. The tears felt earned. They blurred the porch light into a dull halo, like even the house didn't want to look at me clearly. Bang, bang, bang. Every second I waited for him to answer the door was increasing my fury. I thundered on the door with the side of my fist, harder than I meant to, harder than I ever had before. My chest heaved like I'd been running. The Rambler door opened. Noah stood there, calm in that way he always got when something was wrong. Too calm, like he'd already braced himself for impact. His eyes flicked to my face, took in the tears, the shaking, the fury I wasn't even trying to hide. "Tate," he said quietly. That softness in his voice when he said my name almost broke me. He hesitated, shifting his weight, then stepped to the side to let me pass. The gesture was automatic, familiar. "Come in, you're safe here," and it made something in me snap. "No," I said hoarsely, "don't do that." He froze, hand still on the doorframe, eyes searching my face like he was trying to figure out which version of me he was dealing with. "I walked here," I said, my voice cracking despite my effort to keep it steady. "I walked the whole way thinking about every time you looked me in the eye and told me nothing was going on." His jaw tightened. He didn't interrupt. That hurt almost as much as if he had. "You let me believe I was your safe place," I continued. "You let me believe we trusted each other. You lied. You're a liar." He swallowed. I saw it. I always noticed those small tells with him. "Tate, No," I shook my head, tears spilling again. "You don't get to ease into this, not tonight." I walked into his home, enraged with the desire to choke him. Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. The house behind him felt distant, unreal, like a set piece. What mattered was the space between our bodies, the space where honesty had been missing for too long. "I defended you," I said, my voice dropping. "I defended you when people talked, when things didn't make sense, when you smelled like someone else and told me I was imagining it." That finally did it. His calm cracked just slightly, but enough for me to see it. Guilt, fear, something like shame. "I trusted you," I said, almost pleading now. "And I thought you trusted me too." He stepped back, not away from me but inward, like he was folding in on himself. "I didn't know how to tell you," he said quietly. I laughed, sharp and broken. "You had years to figure it out." I wiped my face with the back of my hand, breathing hard. "I'm not here to scream, I'm not here to disappear." I met his eyes, really met them, for the first time since the door opened. "I'm here because I promised you I wouldn't bail again," I said, "but that promise only works if you finally tell me the truth." The house was silent, the night held its breath. And for the first time since I'd stepped onto his lawn, I didn't know which of us was more afraid of what came next. "I couldn't tell you," he said finally. His voice wasn't defensive, it was tired. "You hated gay people. I didn't want to lose you, I didn't want to lose us." Something in me snapped. All the walking, the crying, the photos are burning a hole through my bag, the betrayal layered on betrayal. My body moved before my brain could stop it. I felt fury, betrayal, anger, and disgust as I lunged towards his body. We crashed to the floor in a mess of limbs and breath, the impact knocking the air out of both of us. It wasn't a punch, it wasn't calculated, it was pure collision, years of rage and grief slamming into the one person I'd never learned how to fight. "No," Noah shouted, more startled than hurt. I had him pinned for half a second, just a half second before the reality of what I was doing cut through the fog. His hands came up instinctively, not to strike me but to shield his face. That stopped me cold. "Jesus." I froze, breathing hard, my hands shaking where they pressed into the floor beside his shoulders instead of into him. My tears dropped onto the tile between us. "I trusted you," I choked out. "I wouldn't have changed my anti-gay beliefs, but I would have learned to separate you from those fags. You didn't even give me a chance." His eyes were wide now, glossy, terrified, but not of being hit, terrified of losing me anyway. "Tate," he said quietly, "I was a kid, you were my whole world. I thought if you knew you'd leave me." That broke something open in me. I wrestled him down further onto the floor before either of us could think. We hit the floor hard, the sound echoing through the house. My knee pinned his thigh, my weight trapping him there, my hands shaking so badly I had to curl them into fists just to keep them from doing something irreversible. He wasn't fighting back, that stopped me more than anything. His chest rose fast, eyes wide, not defiant, not angry, just scared, not of pain, of me. I leaned down, close enough to smell him, close enough to feel the truth vibrating between us like a live wire. Even through his anger, Tate's hands instinctively reached up and gently raked through Noah's messy blonde hair. "I loved you," Tate said, his voice trembling. "I wouldn't have cared if you were confused, messed up, or just trying to figure yourself out. Every guy has questions at some point." He swallowed hard, struggling to keep his composure. "But you lied? You intentionally lied to me every single day. You knew how I felt about gay people and you still chose to hide the truth from me. That's what hurts the most. It wasn't the secret, it was that you looked me in the eye every day and kept it from me." "Tell me," I said, my voice breaking, ugly and raw. "Tell me to my face." He swallowed. "Did you ever want me as a friend, or was I your joke?" I demanded. "Was I just the safe, straight idiot you kept around while you lived another life behind my back?" The words tasted like blood. His breath hitched. "Tate. Don't," I snapped, "answer me." For a second I thought he wouldn't, then Noah's eyes filled and his voice came out quiet, wrecked. "I wanted you, I loved you, and not just as a friend. You're more than a friend to me," he said. "I always wanted you since we were 8, I just never thought I was allowed to. I fled your parents' house at 18 to escape my feelings for you." That landed harder than any punch ever could. I felt gross knowing this boy, the body I'd clung to for decades, wanted to fuck me. Noah platonically loving me was natural because that's what buddies feel, but wanting to fuck or date your same-sex companion was wrong. My grip loosened without me meaning to, and I hated the truth he told me. My weight shifted back. Suddenly I was aware of how close I was, how wrong this had gone, how easily I could cross a line I'd never come back from. "You let me hate people like you while you were one. You're a hypocrite," I whispered. "You let me become that guy." He shook his head, tears spilling. "No, you did that, I just survived it." That was it. I let go completely. I wanted to teach Noah a lesson he'd never forget. I turned Noah onto his stomach as I took off his pants. "I'm going to straighten you out," I hiss. Noah tried to wiggle free, desperate to escape. I pinned his small, compact body under my hands as his limbs tried to move him away from me. He grunted and tried to crawl. I held him down. I took off his pants and picked up my belt. I was going to show him how much pain his lying mouth had caused. Noah had acted like a spineless coward and he deserved a spanking. Noah's mind fractured under the weight of it. Pinned, breath shallow, the words Tate had just said echoed in his skull, twisting into something monstrous. "Teach you a lesson." He had heard those words before, not from Tate, but from the kind of men Tate sounded like right now. This is it, Noah thought. He's going to try to straighten me. He's going to punish it out of me. Panic flooded his body, hot and blinding. His hands clawed at the floor, not to fight, not to win, just to get away. His voice came out broken, high, nothing like his own. Noah heard me unbuckle my belt, remove it from my pants, and wrongfully assume something. "Tate, please stop, rape me please." I was about to spank Noah with my belt when Noah's words registered in my brain. Tate's name didn't soften him. That scared Noah more than anything. Years of hiding, of flinching, of learning how to stay quiet slammed into place all at once. This wasn't about betrayal anymore. This was about power, about fear, about survival. "You think this fixes me?" Noah choked, tears spilling sideways onto the floor. "You think this is how you make me normal?" That did it. The word normal hit Tate like a slap. He froze. Not slowly, not dramatically, completely. The room snapped back into focus. The sound of Noah crying, the way his body was curled inward, protecting itself. Tate suddenly saw it the way it really was, not rage, not justice, not truth. It was him, towering, shaking, terrifying someone who had once trusted him with his life. "Oh my God," Tate whispered. "Noah thinks I will try to rape the gay out of him like so many straight men he's encountered since being a boy." "Please," Noah sobbed while on his stomach on the floor, the word tearing out of him. "Tate, please don't, I'm begging you." His voice wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was stripped bare, the sound of someone who had learned very young when to plead instead of fight. "I didn't lie to hurt you," he said through tears. "I lied because I was scared, because I knew this version of you existed somewhere and I prayed I'd never see it." That did it. The words landed harder than anything else had tonight. Tate froze completely. His breath came out sharp and uneven as if he'd just realized he'd been holding it too long. The rage that had driven him moments ago cracked, revealing something underneath it: horror. He looked down and finally saw Noah. Not the betrayer. Not the liar. Not the image burned into his head by photos and secrets. Just Noah, curled inward, shaking, eyes squeezed shut in the fetal position like he was bracing for pain he believed was inevitable. Tate realizes that Noah lied because he feared Tate would inflict violence if the secret became known, or would have abandoned their relationship in disgust. "Oh God," Tate whispered. He scrambled back immediately, hands up, retreating as he'd crossed into a nightmare of his own making. No, I'm not, I would never." Noah didn't move right away. His body didn't trust the sudden distance. He stayed folded in on himself, breathing hard, tears soaking into the floor. "I thought you were safe," Noah said quietly. "I thought you were the one person who wouldn't try to fix me." That sentence shattered what was left of Tate's fury. "I'm so sorry," Tate said, voice wrecked. "I lost myself, I scared you, I scared me." He stayed where he was, far away now, not daring to get closer. "I'm stopping, I swear, I'm done. I was going to spank you, Noah, I would never force myself on you." The room was silent, except for Noah's breathing slowly evening out. I dropped my belt as I sat on him. I stopped myself inches away. I wanted to reach for him, to fix it, to rewind the last 5 minutes, but I didn't. I stayed where I was, hands clenched uselessly in my lap, because I finally understood that touching him now would only make it worse. "I would never hurt you," I said instead, my voice breaking. "I swear to you, and I hate myself for making you think I could." Noah didn't look at me. His whole body was shaking, silent sobs tearing through him as he stared at the floor like it was the only solid thing left in the room. He curled inward, arms wrapped tight around himself, trying to hold himself together. I'd never seen him like that. Not scared of the world. Scared of me. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "I lost control, I crossed a line, and I don't get to undo that just because I didn't mean to." He nodded faintly, not forgiveness, not agreement, just acknowledgement that he'd heard me. I leaned down and kissed his temple, running my hands through his hair. "I loved you," I said quietly, not as a plea, not as an excuse, just the truth. "I never meant to become someone you were afraid of." Noah didn't answer. I was horrified that Noah had thought my rage would turn into violence directed at him, instead of how I really was behaving within Noah's home. "I know," I replied. "I know why you didn't tell me, I know it scared you, but do you see now how much it hurt me to find out this way, to realize you kept me out of your life while all this was happening? I was going to spank you, Noah, for lying to me. I'd never, gulp, rape you, never." He nodded slowly. "I didn't want to lose you, I didn't know how to say anything without ruining us, and I see now, it hurt you even more." I let my eyes rest on him. "Noah, I still love you, all of it, the good, the bad, the messy truth of who you are. And I want you to know that I'm not mad at you for being yourself. I'm angry at the lies, deceit, and bold-faced audacity you showed every time you misled me. Yes, I'm furious, but I love you, always." The tears I'd been holding back finally slipped. He reached for the edge of one photo, then hesitated, his whole body stiff with years of fear and caution. I didn't move toward him, I just let him look. And in that silence, between the photographs and the unspoken apologies, I realized something. The past could not be erased, but maybe, just maybe, we could finally face it together. "Were you in any pain in these photos?" I asked quietly. "In his photo, you look like you're in pain." Noah let out a short, surprised laugh, not mocking, just tired. "No, God, no, it's all consensual, Tate. It was a party, not a nightmare." I studied his face, not the pictures. "None of these men hurt you or forced themselves on you?" I asked. I needed to hear it, out loud. He shook his head more firmly this time. "No, nobody hurt me. Mark was there to keep everything neutral and safe. Nobody forced anything. I wasn't scared. I wasn't being punished or used. I remember that guy was." He paused, then noticed my shock and added gently, "I chose to be there." Something in my chest loosened, not relief exactly, but a recalibration. I'd built so much rage on the idea that he'd been harmed, degraded, treated like an object. Hearing that he hadn't been, at least not in the way I'd imagined, forced me to confront what I was really angry about. "Men don't consent to sodomy, Noah." I do, you look like you don't believe me, Noah said. I'm trying to unlearn a lot of things, I admitted. I saw these and my brain filled in the worst possible story. I thought you were being hurt. I thought I'd failed you somehow. You didn't fail me, he said quietly. You just didn't know this side of me. That landed harder than anything else. Noah was sniffling uncontrollably. Hot tears streaming down his cheeks and soaking into my clothes as I wrapped my arms around him on the floor. I gently rocked him back and forth, holding him as tightly as I could, hoping my embrace would say the words I couldn't seem to find. I pressed a soft kiss against his temple before resting my cheek against his hair. I'm sorry, I whispered. I continued to hold him on my warm lap, stroking his hair and rubbing slow circles across his back. Every movement was an attempt to apologize through my body language, to show him that, despite my anger, I never wanted to be the source of his pain. As we talked, I never let go, hoping he could still feel how deeply I cared for him, even through the hurt that lay between us. I wasn't hiding because I was ashamed of myself, Noah went on. I was hiding because I was afraid of you, afraid of losing you, afraid you'd look at me differently. After I saw how you treated gay men, I was too terrified to share this side of myself. I was worried that your homophobia would become violent if you ever found out the truth about me. You could have injured, hospitalized, or killed me, Tate. I nodded slowly. I wouldn't do that. I wanted to hurt you back because of your lies, not because you're gay, because you didn't trust me enough to tell the truth. That's fair, he said, but you have to understand, I learned early that being honest could cost me everything. We sat with that for a moment, the photos between us no longer weapons, just evidence of a life I hadn't been part of. I don't want to be the kind of person you're afraid to tell the truth to, I said finally, even if it means hearing things that hurt or things I hate. Noah looked at me then, really looked. That's the first thing you've said that makes me feel like we might survive this. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't a resolution, but it was honest ground. And for the first time since everything exploded, that felt like something we could stand on. Why don't you sleep with women? I asked quietly. Noah gave a small, almost amused shrug. I could, he said, but it wouldn't be any fun. I'm gay, Tate. I'm not into painted nails or pussy. He said it plainly, no apology, no drama. I've been out to Mark since I was 18, he went on. Susie figured it out at Brown, and your mom. She read a letter I wrote after you announced your engagement. He nodded. I know now that it wasn't rational to keep it from you, but back then, all I knew were the warnings, the whispers, the way people talked. I learned early that being gay meant being treated like a threat. I exhaled slowly, shame settling in my bones. And I was one of those people, I said. You were, Noah replied, not cruelly, just honestly. Which is why I didn't tell you. I wasn't hiding because I was ashamed of myself. I was hiding because I didn't want to lose you or have you reject me by saying the very things I feared you would say to my face. The room went quiet. I wish you'd trusted me, I said. I wish you'd been safe to trust, he answered, then after a beat, but I also know we were both younger and scared, just in different ways. I nodded, swallowing hard. I'm trying to be better now. He studied me for a long moment. Trying matters, he said. What you do next matters more. The past didn't disappear, but for the first time it felt like it was finally being spoken aloud, without fear, without lies, without pretending. Are you positive? I asked, even though part of me didn't want the answer at all. I'd pay for any treatment, medical care, or nurse you until the end if you are. Noah shook his head. No, my gonorrhea scare woke me up to the reckless way I was living my life. I always wear condoms now and have sex only while sober. I don't do drugs alone with random guys, and I don't accept drinks from strangers. Mark told me the safe ways to be gay, and he saved my life countless times when I was younger and naive. Mark and I tricked together. He helped me find decent, mature, observant gays to club with when Mark wasn't around to supervise. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding, my shoulders sagging with it. Relief washed through me, raw, instinctive, undeniable. Okay, I said quietly, if you're safe, I'm glad. He watched my face closely. That reaction, he said gently, that's the fear talking, not reality. I nodded, shame creeping in. I know, I'm still unlearning things. I panicked because I thought I'd already lost you once and my brain went somewhere ugly. Noah's expression softened just a little. Being sick wouldn't make me less me, he said, and it wouldn't make me less worth loving. I know that now, I said. I didn't always, and I'm sorry. We sat with that for a moment. I shouldn't have to reassure people that I'm clean or safe or acceptable, Noah added quietly. But I also understand why you were scared. I just need you to understand how that lands on someone like me. I do, I said, and I won't say it that way again. He nodded, not absolution but acknowledgement. The relief was real, so was the reckoning that came with it. And for the first time I understood that loving him, really loving him, meant letting go of the fear I'd been taught and choosing him as he was, not as something I needed him to prove himself to be. I took a breath and poured out my thoughts. I understand you think you're gay, but I believe being gay is wrong and unnatural, I said. Noah stiffened. I continued, gays are pervs who hurt kids and vulnerable people. I don't believe sex between two guys is consensual. Two guys having sex is disgusting, illegal, dehumanizing, and being a fag is gross and pathetic. Noah was scared that he would be rejected by Tate. You think I'm disgusting? Noah asked quietly, his voice almost breaking. I shook my head, moving closer to him on my lap, my cheek against his. No, I said softly. Never. You're the oldest, closest person in my life, Noah, and I love you. That hasn't changed. I don't want to see you like that. You're only confused. Be whomever you are, just don't show me the gay stuff, okay? You're not a fag or a perv. You're confused and too nice and cute to be a pedophile, Noah. He hesitated, then leaned his head against my shoulder just for a moment, letting himself feel the comfort without words. I wrapped an arm around him, not overbearing, not claiming him, just holding him steady. I hate that I scared you, I whispered. I've hated that my anger, my fear, my ignorance made you afraid of me. Noah closed his eyes. You did, he admitted softly, but I can hear you now. I can hear that you're trying. I am, I said, voice trembling. I'll spend the rest of my life trying if that's what it takes to make up for the years I lost with you. For the first time in decades, we sat together, not perfectly healed, not fully trusting, but together. And for now, that was enough. I hate fags, I said, but you're too cute and we have too much history for me to throw you away, I smile. Am I a fag to you? Noah asked. No, you're the exception, I admit while hugging him. How does a straight guy like me sleep next to a gay boy like you for 24 years and not know? I ask. Noah didn't answer right away. He leaned back against the arm of the couch, eyes fixed on a spot somewhere past me like he was deciding how much truth I could handle. Because you weren't looking, he said finally, not unkindly, just honest. I frowned. I was right there. You were, he agreed, but you were looking at your version of me, the one that felt safe, familiar, the one that fit into your world without asking you to change anything. I swallowed. You slept next to me because we built a routine, Noah went on, because we were kids who needed comfort, because later we were adults who didn't know how to let go of the past without breaking it. He looked at me then, and because I learned very early what parts of myself made you tense, what jokes did you laugh at, what silences you preferred. That's not fair, I said quietly. I know, he replied, but it's true. I rubbed my face with my hands, so all those years I just missed it. You didn't miss me, Noah said. You missed the evidence and didn't ask questions because it was easier to believe what came out of my mind and not your gaze. You never asked who I was when you weren't in the room, and I didn't volunteer it because I knew the answer might cost me you. That landed hard. You weren't blind, he added. You were comfortable, and comfort has a way of dulling curiosity. I exhaled slowly. I thought knowing someone that long meant I knew everything. Noah gave a small, sad smile. Knowing someone that long just means you know the parts they let you see. We sat in silence after that, not angry, not healed, just two people finally numbing the thing that had been there all along. And now, I asked. Now, Noah said, steady and clear, you decide whether you want to actually know me or just remember the version that never challenged you. That was the question I couldn't dodge anymore. I nodded. I bought the photographs from Charles because I didn't want those men leering at you, I admitted. It felt wrong, like you were being turned into something you weren't. Noah studied my face for a long moment, weighing it, then he let out a slow breath. Thank you, he said, not relieved, not forgiven, just grateful. He hesitated just a second, then leaned forward and rested his head against my chest. It was his choice. I didn't move to pull him closer, I just stayed still and let him be there. People forget I'm a person, he said softly. They see a story they want to tell instead. I know, I replied, my voice shook despite myself. I'm trying to learn how not to do that. He nodded once, his forehead warm through my shirt. What you did wasn't about control, he said. It was about protection. There's a difference. I swallowed. I didn't know how else to say I was sorry. No man should have photographs taken of intimate moments that later entertain pervs. You're saying it now, Noah said, and you're listening. We stayed like that for a while, the room quiet, the past loud but no longer screaming. It wasn't a resolution, it wasn't a promise. But it was a pause, earned, fragile, and for the first time in a long time it felt like we were finally standing on honest ground. Noah lifted his head slightly, just enough to look at me. You know, people will talk, he said, they always do. Yeah, I replied, they probably will. I exhaled, a tired half-smile tugging at my mouth. But that already happened, remember, back in school, people said things then too. He nodded, he remembered. I won't end our relationship over rumors, I said, or over names people throw around because they don't understand. I'm done letting that decide who I stand beside. Let's pretend you're not a fag and I don't know. He studied my face, searching for the catch, for the condition. Finding none, his shoulders loosened. That means more than you think, he said quietly. I lifted a hand and after a brief pause to make sure he was okay with it, ran my fingers gently through his hair, slow, familiar, nothing claimed, just comfort, just presence. You shouldn't have had to be alone with that, I added. Not then, not now. Noah leaned back again, resting against me, lighter this time. I got used to believing support always came with a price, he said, that it could be taken back if it made someone uncomfortable. Then let this be different, I said. I'm still learning, I'm still messing things up, but I'm not walking away because other people can't keep their mouths shut. He let out a quiet laugh, more breath than sound. That's all I ever wanted, he said, for you to choose me when it wasn't easy. We sat there in the quiet, not fixed, not finished, but no longer hiding from the truth or from each other. And for the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel like something to fear. Go to therapy, I said. A therapist can sort out your gay curiosity and then you can go back to being straight. Noah looked at Tate in stunned silence. It was obvious Tate didn't understand what being gay meant. Once you get all that curiosity and those socially unacceptable deviations taken care of, then we can go back to normal. Being gay is not normal or acceptable. Noah's eyes filled with hurt, but he didn't interrupt. If you want to talk about those gross things, Tate continued, you have friends for that, just don't bring it up around me. Let's just act as though it's an elephant that doesn't exist in the room. The room fell silent as Noah struggled to process the words Tate had just spoken. Can guys consent to sex with other dudes? I asked quietly, the words awkward and heavy. Yeah, Noah said firmly. Of course they can, it's just the same as with heterosexual couples. I frowned, even with the positions, the dynamics. He shook his head. Consent is the same, both people have to agree, both people have the right to say no at any time, that's what matters. The positions or who's on top aren't what make it okay or not, it's about mutual agreement and respect. I exhaled slowly, letting the tension leave my shoulders. I guess I never thought about it that way, I always just assumed it was different. Nope, he said, a small, patient smile breaking through. Sex is sex, the details change but the rules, consent, respect, communication, those don't. I nodded, feeling a little shame mixed with relief. I'm glad you're patient with me, I'm still unlearning a lot. No problem, he said, I've been learning too, we just have to be honest with each other from now on. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in decades it felt like I could see the full picture of who he was, not just my assumptions, not just the things I'd imagined. And that honesty, fragile and slow, felt like hope. Your cheeks are so warm, I said softly, smiling. I held my hands near his face, careful not to make him uncomfortable. You always were a little furnace. Noah laughed quietly, the sound a little hesitant but genuine. Yeah, I guess I've always run hot, he admitted. I miss that, I said, just seeing you, being close without all the misunderstandings and lies in between. He looked down, a small smile tugging at his lips. Me too, I didn't realize how much I wanted normal again, just us talking sitting like this. I nodded, letting the moment stretch. No expectations, no judgment, just presence. I want this to be real, I said. No secrets, no fear, just you and me like we should have had all along. For the first time in years, Noah relaxed against me, not because the past was gone, but because he finally believed I wasn't going to hurt him again. And that was enough. Aren't you afraid, Noah asked quietly, watching me closely, that touching me will somehow change you gay? I shook my head, a small smile breaking through. No, I said, I'm willing to risk it. After everything in my 28 years of living, I think the gay doesn't see me. He studied my face. You used to. I know, I admitted, and I was wrong. Touch doesn't rewrite who you are, it just means you're human. He let out a breath, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. I'm straight, I continued, steady now. And you're temporarily gay, and neither of those things is fragile enough to be undone by a hand on a shoulder or someone sitting close. Noah's lips curved into a cautious smile. That's good to hear. I'm not afraid of caring about you, I said. I'm not afraid of being seen standing next to you. If people want to talk, they can talk. He nodded slowly, like he was letting himself believe it. We sat there like that, no fear, no bravado, just two people finally learning that closeness didn't have to come with panic or shame. And for once it felt simple. Are you the girl during sex? I asked. Half of the time Noah smiled. I fucked a guy once, I admit. I wasn't in a good place and I never want to do that again, I admit. Noah was shocked. I could tell by his pale face that he'd never imagined me with a man. I tensed immediately. The gayness Noah had still made me afraid. I'll overlook your gayness if you're patient about me overcoming my homophobia, Noah. Noah flinched slightly at my words but didn't interrupt. I couldn't stop the anger that had built up since I found out Noah was hiding his true self from me. I'm not sure I feel relief, Noah said softly. I just feel tired. Yeah, I said, running a hand through my hair. I'm tired too, tired of everyone who thought they could control us, lie to us, scare us. It's over now, finally. Noah exhaled slowly. It doesn't erase anything, he admitted, but maybe it's a chance to stop being haunted by him. I nodded. Exactly, we can move forward now. No more shadows of his games, no more fear. For a moment, we sat in silence. The weight of the past pressed down, but the air between us was a little lighter, still raw, still unhealed, but freer than it had been in years. I care that you're gay, I admitted, the words heavy and ugly in my mouth. I won't pretend I don't. I was raised to see it a certain way, and that didn't disappear overnight. Noah went very still, watching me carefully. But I care about you more, I said, kissing Noah's wet temple. More than my fear, more than what I was taught, more than the anger I've been hiding behind for years. His throat worked as he swallowed. That doesn't make it easy to hear, he said, but it's honest. I'm not proud of it, I continued. I hate that I let those beliefs live in me for so long. And I know loving you means I can't keep holding on to them the same way. We won't talk about your gayness after today, but I'll hold cognitive dissonance about it if you stay where I can love you. You don't have to be perfect, Noah said quietly, but I can't be something you love in spite of who I am. I nodded. I know, and I'm not there yet, but I'm choosing you over the hate, every day if I have to. He didn't rush toward me, he didn't forgive me on the spot, but his shoulders softened just a little. That choice matters, he said, even if it's hard. And for the first time, I understood that real change didn't start with certainty or comfort. It started with choosing a person over the lie you'd been taught to believe. Were you ever attracted to me or in love, Noah? I asked more quietly this time. Noah's cheeks flushed immediately. No, he said too fast. I gave a small, sad smile. You don't have to protect me anymore. He looked away, fingers twisting together. I didn't know what attraction was back then, he said after a moment. I knew I felt different around you, I knew I wanted to be close, I knew losing you scared me more than anything. That still counts, I said gently. He nodded. Yeah, it does, but it wasn't sexual until I was 14. I realized at 8 that my feelings were romantic love, but it was confusing. It was admiration, safety, and wanting to be chosen. I was a kid trying to understand himself in a world that wasn't kind to boys like me who experienced same-sex attraction. I exhaled, the weight of it settling in my chest. I wish I'd been safer for you. So do I, he said softly, but we were both young and we both survived the best way we could. There was no accusation in his voice, just truth. And now, I asked. Now, Noah said, meeting my eyes, we get to decide what honesty looks like, without rewriting the past into something it wasn't. You were in love, I said, the words coming out sharper than I meant. With me. I've known it for years, or at least suspected you had a childish infatuation towards me. Everyone in LA kind of does, Noah, just admit it. How could I not know when your face turned pink whenever I complimented your looks or clothes? Noah's back pressed into the arm of the couch. His eyes flicked toward the door, then back to me. He didn't speak. I saw it then, the way his shoulders drew in, the way his hands clenched, not guilt, not shame. Fear. His voice wasn't loud, but it was steady. I wasn't in love with you for just a year, Tate, Noah said. It was 18 years of loving you in silence. It started when I was 8 years old and it ended when you got married 2 years ago. Honestly, I'm glad I finally moved on. Tate stared at him, unable to respond. I'm not in love with you anymore. I realized it was hopeless, and we both deserved to be happy without wasting any more months or years chasing dreams and fantasies that were never going to happen. Noah took a breath, his voice softening. I want you to be happy with Chloe, Tate. I want you to be content. I started falling out of love with you when I was 18, then again when I was 20, and especially when we were 26 and you got engaged and left me behind. He shook his head slightly. There's nothing there anymore. That doesn't mean I don't think you're attractive, because I do, I always have, but I don't want a life with you like that anymore. I don't want to keep holding on to something that isn't real. A small, sad smile crossed Noah's face. I have Riley now. He's kind, he cares about me, he makes me happy, and I want to see where that takes me. The truth of it hit me hard. I stepped back without thinking, my chest tightening. I'm sorry, I said, the word rough. I thought you got over it once we left Brown. I've tried, but you never leave my mind or heart, Tate. I can't get you out of my head no matter how long or how much I try, Noah said. Yeah, I wanted to fuck you, but not like the pervs in this town. I wanted to share my body, future, and nights with you, moving towards something we both might want together. I never wanted to use you like a piece of meat or just take from you. I love you. Yeah, I feel this towards you, but there's love, trust, and respect there too. Silence settled between us, heavier than before. I cared about you, he added finally, deeply, in ways I didn't have words for, but love isn't something you drag out of someone, and it isn't something you weaponize. I've accepted since you abandoned me to marry Chloe that you're incapable of gay love, so don't feel bad for breaking my heart too many times to count. I'm older now, and that part of my life is finished and buried with all the rest of my childish dreams 2 years ago. I'm dating a nice guy. Riley is a man I met on a cruise, Mark, and I took to the Philippines. I nodded, shame burning. I'm glad you're happy with someone. You're right, I can't reciprocate your romantic feelings, but I love you just as much in a platonic, passionate way. It's not a lesser form of love, Noah, just a different part of my heart loves you. Noah straightened a little. If we're going to restart our platonic relationship, there are a few things we need to discuss before we don't talk about it again. I understand, I said, and for the first time I meant it. How long have you known you were gay, really? I suspected my orientation when I was 14, but I didn't have the courage to say it out loud until Mark and I met in 1986. Just after my 18th birthday I came out to Mark, but I wasn't entirely sure until Brown. Once in college I felt comfortable telling Susie, and my other friends found out a few years later, after the fight which led to us moving into the Green Ramble. I was too scared to tell you because you scared gay people away from me. I didn't want you to look at me like I was a perv or a confused kid. You put your hands on me earlier, so my fears of physical violence weren't my imagination. I won't keep things like that from you anymore, I promise. Noah didn't forgive me. He needed time to process what had happened between uses. But he didn't leave either. And that, I realized, was a fragile kind of mercy, one I didn't get to take for granted anymore. Remember when I cried on the side of the freeway, Tate reminded Noah. I told you not to love me, I meant it. Noah's breath caught when I said it. He looked down, then back up at me like he was bracing himself for an old wound to open again. I remember, he said quietly. You were shaking. Cars kept rushing past and you looked so small standing there, even though you never let yourself be happy or vulnerable like that with me very often. I swallowed. I told you not to love me, I said again, slower this time. And I meant it, not because you didn't deserve love but because I knew I wasn't safe to rely on and I can't return gay feelings when I'm straight. I knew I didn't understand myself or you or what my fear could turn into." Noah's jaw tightened. "I thought you were pushing me away because you didn't want me." "I was," I admitted, "but not because you were unlovable, because I was afraid of what platonically loving me would cost you." He was quiet for a long moment. "I didn't hear it that way back then," he said. "All I heard was that I was asking for too much." "I know," I said, "and I hate that I didn't have better words. I hate that I left you with that." Noah nodded slowly. "I carried it for a long time," he said. "That moment, it taught me how to love quietly from a distance, without asking." My chest tightened. "You shouldn't have had to learn that." "No," he agreed, "but I did, and it shaped me." Noah knew that nothing would change. Tate would never love him the way he had once dreamed he might. That truth no longer felt like a punishment, it was simply reality. For 18 years Noah had carried hope through silence, through longing, and through impossible fantasies. Now at last he let them go. Tate's heart belonged elsewhere, and Noah had finally found the strength to stop waiting for a future that was never going to come. Some stories were never meant to become love stories, and that was all right. Noah walked away, not defeated but free, knowing that the life ahead of him was no longer defined by the person who could never choose him. We sat there, the memory stretched between us like a scar, old, healed, but still tender. "I don't want you to love me the way you did back then, now that I know," I said finally. "Not in secret, not in fear. If you care about me now, it has to be because you choose to, not because you think you owe me something." Noah looked at me, really looked. "That's the first time you've said something that makes me feel safe since you found out I'm gay," he said. I nodded. "Then let that be the truth we keep." "I want you to understand something, Noah, so there's no chance you'll continue to hope for something that can never happen. I can't ever love you back the way you love me, Noah. Gay love completely repulses me." The freeway memory was long behind us. But for the first time, the memory didn't feel like a warning, it felt like a lesson we'd finally understood. Noah let out a slow breath, like he'd been holding it longer than either of us realized. "I know," he said quietly. "There was sadness there, but also acceptance, earned, not forced. I never needed you to be something you're not." I nodded. "I like women, that hasn't changed, and I don't want to pretend otherwise or lead you somewhere that hurts you again." Noah looked at me then, really looked. "Thank you for saying it plainly," he said. "That hurts less than guessing." "I'm sorry," I added. "Not for who I am, but for the pain my confusion caused you, for the times I blurred lines I couldn't cross. Did I hurt you unintentionally when I moved at night?" Noah would always care about Tate as part of his past, but he no longer wished for a life that was not meant to be. He had found the love he deserved and was genuinely, deeply happy. As he looked toward the future,